What's up, guys? I'm Chris, and today you're watching a magic review on The End by Angelo Carbone. What is The End? So, quite simply, The End is a book test, but this isn't your average standard book test that you're probably familiar with. It does have familiar elements, but Angelo has put in a ton of work and thought when it comes to the construction and how to perform this. So let's start with the packaging, because I do want to mention the packaging because I absolutely love it. So the packaging looks like this. It looks like a book, which is really cool. So this is one piece of packaging that I'm not going to throw out. I'm going to actually put this up with the rest of my books because I think it looks good. So inside, you have the tutorial, which I'm covering obviously. Then you will get the book itself. You will also get a book of written instructions, which I highly recommend going over, even though you do have a video tutorial as well. And then you also get these stickers. I'm just going to show that quickly. But the stickers here, those are your cribs. So if you don't want to memorize the words, you don't have to. The crib, the way that it's designed with these stickers, they can be put anywhere, but there is a reason that they were designed the way they are, and that is so they can be hidden in plain sight. So that's what you get. Let's get into the quality, because I think that's going to be one of the most important aspects of this review. So the quality is extraordinary. Okay, so that's the physical quality as well as the quality that the process of how this has been put together is just outstanding. So the quality of the book, it's a 325 pages, which I think, if I remember correctly, there's something like 75,000 words in this. That could be wrong, but there's a ton of words, right? So Angelo has thought of everything from, the layout of the book. There's chapter headings, there's page numbers. All the pages are different. The font, the color of the pages. Like, Angelo had a number of things that he wanted to improve upon when it came to other book tests, and that was that first and foremost, he wanted this to look like a real, legitimate book. Now, when I say he put thought and time into this, Angelo actually wrote a story. So this book can be read cover to cover and it will make sense, right? So unlike a lot of other book tests where words might be out of place or pages may be duplicated, with this, that's not the case, right? So you can actually read this book and if you want to say to your participant, read a couple pages if you want, right? Just so that you can see this is a regular book. I mean, don't overprove, but it's just those little things in there they can look through and there's nothing to find, right? So the quality of the book is really good. There, I'll just show you kind of, it's good. Like, what else can I say about quality? So I guess let's get into more about this book itself and the way that it was developed. I guess we'll touch on tutorial, because you do have the written tutorial, which, like I said, I would recommend reading over just to get everything down. There's also a video tutorial that is filmed by Murphy's Magic. It is taught by Javier. He goes over pretty much everything that's in the written book, talks about the history, all the little nuances that were put into this book, as well as the method. There is also a way to, if you want to memorize the words, which I would suggest, because then you don't need your crib, right? But there is actually, Angelo really thought that out too, because the words in this book, he has a way of memorizing them that makes it very easily. So once you memorize these words, even if you don't perform this book test for a year, they're going to come back like that. Because it's not a mnemonic, but I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to expose anything, but there is a way that makes it super easy to memorize all these words. It also makes it easier to know, which words you're divining right away. Now, what makes this book test different than other book tests? Well, for one, like I said, this is a regular book that you can read through from cover to cover, which you will not find in most book tests. The other thing is that this can be done completely hands-off. Well, actually, it is done completely hands-off. You never have to touch the book other than handing it to your participant. What's great about this book test is there is no forcing. There is no handling by the magician or mentalist. There is no fishing. So, a lot of the times with a book test, especially if it's hands-off, you're going to be fishing for a specific letter, and that's one thing that Angelo wanted to get away from. So you're not going to be asking for the first letter. You're not going to be getting a miss. There is something that at first may seem like a miss, but you turn it into a hit immediately. And I know that that's been said in other book tests as well, but this one not only turns into a hit, it makes it look like you got that hit before they gave you anything. And it's not always a miss. There is a situation or a circumstance in where you will never have any misses, but when you do, not only does it turn into a hit, but they realize that it was a hit before they said anything. So it's not even right to call it a miss, but it's just, for lack of a better term, that's, I guess, what we have to call it for the sake of calling it something. That miss that turns into a hit also gives perfect justification as to why they gave you any information at all in the first place. So, again, it's actually a good thing, that miss, because it adds to the routine, it justifies everything, and then it turns into a hit. So who cares, right? Difficulty level. So, this is very easy to do. Now, the only way that this is either somewhat difficult or not difficult at all is whether you choose to memorize the words. And I mean, over time, practicing or performing this book test with the crib, so no memory work there, which makes difficulty completely, there is no difficulty, right? It's just easy. Performing this over time with the crib, eventually those words will just naturally become memorized. But if you choose to sit through and memorize the words, obviously it's a little bit more difficult because you are memorizing the words. But again, Angelo has thought out a way that makes it super simple to memorize all the words. Now, this, I maybe should have touched on this in tutorial, but we're in difficulty. And one thing that I will mention is that I would highly, highly recommend going off the script that Angelo provides. So it's not that this book test won't work if you kind of stray from the path of the script. It will still work, but you're not going to get the most out of this book test, right? The script was put together in a way so that everything's justified, everything makes sense, everything will be a hit, and in the end, your participant will never be able to backtrack this. They will never even think that they gave you any information because they hardly do. And that's all based on the script. So Angelo has actually updated the instructions from the small booklet. So I believe now you'll probably get a PDF link because he has added in some do's and don'ts. So definitely go over those, because in doing that, you're going to know how to get the most out of this test. Angles. So there are no angle restrictions, right? The only way that there's ever going to be any angle issues is if you're using a crib, right? So if you're using the crib that is provided in the way that it was designed to be used, there's still not really any angle issues unless your participant knows what to look for, which they won't. But that crib is designed to be used in plain sight, and the only time there may be an angle issue with that is, like I said, if they know what to look for and where to look, and if they're behind you. But if they're in front of you or to the sides, it's completely covered. So you can be looking at that crib, and it's actually developed in a way where you can stare at the crib and they're not going to know that you're looking at anything because, well, I won't say why, you'll see that in the tutorial, but that's where I think it completely gets rid of any angle issues anyway. Setup and reset, there is no setup unless you want to, if you're using the crib, right, you would just set that up, but that takes 3 seconds, maybe 5 if you're slow. Instant reset, there is nothing to reset, right? This can be repeated, okay? Now, if you repeat it, people can come across the same words, but that's also what I really like about this, because the words that you will be divining they actually make sense in the book. So without giving too much away, if you hand the book to somebody else after you've divined one person's word and they see the same word, they may say, oh, I just seen the same word, right? And you'd say, okay, well, just read the sentence. And I got to think of better pattern or scripting for this, but basically, like, if they see that word again, it's because it's an important part of the book. So the word makes sense for it to be there a number of times, right? So basically, like, for an example, if you're watching the show Sesame Street, right, the word Sesame Street is going to come up in the show a number of times. It only makes sense because that is a place in the show and it's the name of the show. If you are reading a book where the main character's name is Jolie, obviously that name is going to be repeated throughout the book. It's the same with these words. So even if they do see a repeat of a word, it isn't suspicious, it isn't weird, it makes sense. They can actually read a little bit to see that, okay, that makes sense that word is there and why it's throughout the book. But it's not repeated throughout the book. Like, you may see it on page 17 and then again on page 35, right? But it's not like you're going to see that word again on the next page or the page after that or the page after that. So it's not like they're going to be, if they open the book and go through this page and then the next page they're going to see the same word and the next page they're going to see the same word. It's not like that. So he's really looked after all of these aspects. And what's also amazing about this is that you can tell he really researched the words, right? He spent a lot of time deciding what words were going to work for this book test to follow the principle that it does and be consistent. But the great thing is, too, with some other book tests, when you say, for example, find a longer word because I want this to be a little bit more challenging or more interesting, right? I've had it before where even though you say, like, find a word, 7-8 letters long, they'll pick like a 5-6 letter word because to them that's a longer word on the page, and then you're hooped, right? With this, Angelo he's put in a fail safe so that, like, I gotta watch what I say here because I don't want to expose her tip method, but at the same time, like, I think a lot of you will understand an aspect of the method here. But if you tell them to look for something somewhat specific, and I hate to say somewhat specific because it makes it sound like you're guiding them towards a specific word, but you're not. It's very, very, very fair. Okay, so I want to be very clear in saying that. But basically, you slightly guide them in one direction, and I don't think that gives too much away because you pretty much have to do that with any hands-off book test, right? Otherwise they could pick the word and it would be impossible, right? So when you're guiding them, it is 100% clear, easy to follow, and they will always end up where they need to be. Okay, that's as best as I can say it without saying too much. There's no chance that they're going to stray from the path in going where they need to go. Arts and crafts, is it ready to use? The only arts and crafts are setting up your crib if you want to, like I mentioned, takes no time at all. Can it be inspected? Can somebody examine this book? 100%, right? If you gave them this book to read from cover to cover and you said bring it back to me in a week, they could do that, right? I mean, you're not going to do that, but it can be done. Pocket space. So it's a bigger book, right? You're not going to carry this one around in your pocket. You might throw it in like a backpack or something, or like a carry bag. But I did recently see that he has pocket-sized versions. So you'll get the same book it's about like that. Okay, so it's a lot smaller. I think you have to contact him directly at this point for that. But I did see him post in a group that there were smaller versions, and there's also 5 different covers. So, if you really like this book test, you can buy multiples to have the ability on like a stage show or something for your participant to select a book, and same method, same outcome, right? I think I might actually purchase another cover, or another book with a different cover, because there's another cover that I think is really, really good. Is it a worker, and who would use this? So is it a worker? This version, the non-pocket version, you're probably going to use in like a stage show, a parlor show, or even a close-up show, right? Any type of show or working gig you can apply this to and have it as part of your set. I wouldn't carry this around with me if I'm strolling or table hopping. And that's simply because of the size. It would take up too much space, and it would hinder me from carrying other effects that I may need to carry if I'm doing a strolling gig. With that said, if you pick up the pocket version, then this could very much be a worker in regards to strolling and table hopping. So, the standard size, maybe not the best for that specific type of gig, but there's a pocket available. So what's the price, and is it worth your money? So this is $100. Okay. Now, is it worth your money? Honestly, this is one of the best book tests, if not the best book test right now that I've come across. I'm also a huge fan of Frankenstein by Caleb Wade, and this next one that I'm going to be reviewing right after, which is the Revolution book test by Illusionist. But for as much as this can do, I have found some downsides, so make sure you watch the review. With that said, with this one, everything is so well justified, and I'll get more to positives and negatives here in a second, because I was just going to mention something, but is it worth the price? So not only do you get a very high quality book with everything laid out before you, Angelo's done all the thinking. You also get your cribs, you get your written instructions, and then you get the video tutorial, which also explains things very well. There's a few different performances on there. There's one by Titanus. And then on top of that, there's also additional performance ideas and tips, different presentations, routines. And like with the book test, a standard book test, you can't do too much with it, right? I mean, you're having them select a word and you're defining it, but they do go over some alternatives that allow you to come up with some different routines and presentations. So you are getting a ton with this. So I would say that the price is justified. Book tests aren't cheap, even book tests with the, how can I say this in code? I don't know. So even book tests with different methods that you have to handle and you have to force still run like $60. So for what this is and everything that's been included, I think $100 is a very fair price. I think that you will love this, and I think that you will use it. So I think, if you're going to use this, I always say if you're going to use this and get your reactions and it's going to be consistent, it's going to be something that you continue to use, then most often the price is justified, right? So, and I'm going to say that with this. So pros and cons, positives, negatives. What I was going to say before is that I have no negatives for this at all. With other book tests, there are a lot of times, not necessarily negatives, but some drawbacks, or because of the way the method works. You have to do some things that aren't as fair as this one is. But with this, I can't think of any negatives, nothing physical, nothing in regards to method or presentation. Positives, everything's justified, hands off. Angelo has put so much thought and work into this that I think this just puts it at the top of the list as far as book tests go. So with that, I don't know what else to say. I don't want this review to go on too long where I'm just repeating things, but I think I've covered everything that I had hoped to. So yeah, if you have any questions, just leave that in the comment. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, join the Chris Edwards Magic Secret Access group there on Facebook for additional conversation and unlisted videos. And with that, we'll see you at the next review.